The notification on my phone read, "Your wife just checked in at the Riverside Hotel," and my stomach dropped like an anchor. I stared at the screen of my laptop, the quarterly reports for Brennan Industries blurring into meaningless numbers. It was 3:10 p.m. on a Tuesday. Jessica had told me this morning she'd be at her sister's house in Portland, helping with a new baby. Her sister lived 40 minutes north. The Riverside Hotel was 20 minutes south, in the opposite direction. My name is Ryan Caldwell, and I'm a financial analyst for one of the largest manufacturing firms in Oregon. I'm 34 years old, married for 8 years, father to 2 beautiful daughters, Emma, who's 7, and Lily, who just turned 5. I coach Emma's soccer team on weekends. I've never missed a parent-teacher conference. I thought I was living the dream. The location notification wasn't something I'd set up to spy on my wife. We'd enabled family sharing on our phones 2 years ago after Jessica got into a minor car accident, and I couldn't find her for 3 terrifying hours. It was supposed to be for safety, for peace of mind. I refreshed the location. Still there. The Riverside Hotel. My hands trembled as I picked up my phone and called her. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. On the 3rd attempt, she answered. "Hey, babe," Jessica's voice sounded slightly breathless. "Can I call you back? I'm elbow deep in dirty diapers here." I could hear something in the background. Not a baby crying. Music. Soft jazz, maybe. "Sure," I heard myself say. "No problem." The call ended. I sat there in my office, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, and felt my world tilting sideways. There could be an explanation. Maybe her sister had come down south for some reason. Maybe the location was wrong. GPS could be glitchy, right? But she'd lied about the diapers. I'd heard no baby. I grabbed my jacket and told my assistant, Patricia, that I had a family emergency. The drive to the Riverside Hotel took 18 minutes. I know because I watched every second tick by on my dashboard clock, each one feeling like an hour. The Riverside Hotel wasn't some cheap roadside motel. It was upscale, the kind of place with a valet service and a restaurant that required reservations. The kind of place where Portland's business elite held conferences and wedding receptions. The parking garage required a key card to enter, but the valet stand was unmanned at this hour. I pulled into a visitor spot near the entrance. Jessica's silver Honda Accord was parked on the 2nd level. I'd bought it for her last year for her 30th birthday. The custom license plate read, Jess 2023. There was no mistaking it. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. A part of me wanted to drive away, to pretend I'd never seen that notification, to go back to my office and lose myself in spreadsheets. But I couldn't. I had to know. The lobby was decorated in modern minimalist style, lots of glass and chrome, abstract art on the walls. A young woman at the front desk smiled at me as I walked past, heading toward the elevator bank. I had no idea what room number to look for. I hadn't thought this through. Then I saw them. They were at the hotel bar, tucked into a corner booth that was partially hidden by a decorative bamboo screen. But I could see them clearly enough. Jessica wore the blue dress I'd complimented that morning, the one that brought out her eyes. Her hand was resting on the arm of a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, probably mid-30s, wearing an expensive suit. They were laughing about something. As I watched, he leaned in and kissed her. Not a peck on the cheek, a real kiss. And she kissed him back. The world went silent. I could see the bartender mixing drinks, see other patrons talking and gesturing, see my wife's fingers threading through a stranger's hair, but I couldn't hear anything over the roaring in my ears. I don't know how long I stood there. It might have been seconds. It might have been minutes. Finally, I turned and walked back to my car on legs that didn't feel like my own. I drove home on autopilot. The girls wouldn't be back from school for another hour. Jessica's mother picked them up on Tuesdays and kept them until 5. I had time to think, time to process, time to figure out what the hell I was going to do. Our house was a 4-bedroom colonial in a quiet suburban neighborhood. We'd bought it 6 years ago, right after Emma was born. Jessica had spent months decorating it, making it perfect. Family photos lined the hallway. The girls' artwork covered the refrigerator. Everything looked exactly as it had this morning when I'd kissed my wife goodbye and told her to drive safely. I went to my home office and opened my laptop. My hands were steadier now, my mind shifting into analytical mode. It's what I do for a living. Analyze data, find patterns, make logical decisions based on evidence. I pulled up our phone records from our cellular provider's website. Jessica's call log showed multiple calls to a number I didn't recognize, going back 3 months. Short calls during the day, longer ones in the evening when she'd claimed to be talking to her mother or her friends. I checked our credit card statements next. Charges at restaurants I'd never heard of. A purchase at an expensive lingerie boutique. Nothing I'd ever seen her wear. Hotel charges. Multiple hotel charges over the past 2 months, always on weekday afternoons. How had I missed this? The next morning, I called in sick to work. I hadn't slept more than an hour, maybe 2. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her kissing him. Heard the jazz music playing while she lied to my face. I needed to know who he was. The unknown number appeared 63 times in our phone records over the past 3 months. Most calls lasted between 5 and 20 minutes. I copied it into a reverse lookup service, but it came back as a mobile number with no public information attached. I sat in my home office, staring at the screen. The girls were at school. Jessica had left for work at 7:30, same as always. She'd kissed me on the cheek before leaving. The casualness of it made my stomach turn. Her work. Aircraft safety inspector for the Federal Aviation Administration's regional office. She'd been proud when she got that position 4 years ago, after working her way up from administrative roles. The job required integrity, she'd told me. Lives depended on her doing it right. I opened a new browser window and searched for FAA inspection records. Most were publicly available through Freedom of Information Act requests, but the database was complex. I spent 2 hours navigating through reports before I found Jessica's name attached to several recent inspections. One airline appeared repeatedly: Skybound Airways. I'd never heard of them. A quick search showed they were a budget carrier operating regional routes throughout the Pacific Northwest. Founded 3 years ago. Aggressive expansion. Rock-bottom prices that undercut major carriers by 40%. Their CEO and founder was listed as Derek Paulson. I typed his name into Google Images. The man from the hotel bar stared back at me from a dozen professional photos. Same tall build, same expensive suit aesthetic, same confident smile. 42 years old according to his company bio. Previously worked as operations director for a larger airline before striking out on his own. My hands started shaking. Jessica was having an affair with the CEO of an airline she was supposed to be inspecting. I stood up, paced the office. This wasn't just adultery. This was a conflict of interest. A federal employee in a relationship with someone she had regulatory authority over. That alone could cost her the job. But something else nagged at me. Those rock-bottom prices. The aggressive expansion. I'd worked in financial analysis long enough to know that airlines operated on razor-thin margins. Fuel, labor, maintenance, the costs were fixed and substantial. You couldn't just cut prices by 40% without cutting something else. I pulled up Skybound's inspection records. Jessica's signature appeared on dozens of reports over the past 18 months, all approving aircraft as airworthy. The dates aligned with when Derek Paulson's number first appeared in our phone records. 18 months, not 3 months. The affair had been going on far longer than I'd thought. I downloaded every inspection report I could find with Jessica's name on it. Then I started cross-referencing them with industry standards, pulling up FAA regulations and maintenance requirements. It took hours. The technical language was dense, but I forced myself to focus. Patterns emerged. On 3 separate occasions, Jessica had signed off on aircraft that should have been grounded for mandatory maintenance. The intervals between required inspections had been stretched beyond legal limits. Replacement parts that should have been installed weren't listed in the maintenance logs. I found one report where she'd approved an aircraft with a documented hydraulic issue that was marked as resolved, without any corresponding repair work logged. Another where brake system warnings had been noted and then cleared without explanation. My chest tightened. These weren't just paperwork errors. These were safety violations. Passengers were flying on aircraft that hadn't been properly maintained. I pulled up Skybound's flight records. The plane with the hydraulic issue, tail number N847SB, had flown 6 routes the day after Jessica approved it, 147 passengers total across those flights. The brake system aircraft had flown for 2 weeks before finally being taken out of service. Hundreds of passengers. I sat back in my chair, feeling sick. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was falsifying federal safety reports, endangering lives. And Derek Paulson was using her to cut maintenance costs, boost his profit margins, undercut competitors. I thought about Emma and Lily. How many times had Jessica flown them somewhere? How many times had I trusted her professional judgment, believed in her integrity? How many times had she approved a plane knowing it wasn't safe, then gone home and tucked our daughters into bed? I needed more evidence, something concrete that couldn't be explained away. Jessica kept work files on her laptop. She usually brought it home, left it in her car overnight. I'd never had a reason to look at it before. I waited until afternoon, then drove to the FAA regional office where she worked. Her silver Honda was in the parking lot, 3rd row from the building. I had a spare key on my ring. We'd exchanged them years ago for emergencies. The laptop bag sat on the back seat. I took it, locked the car, drove home. Her password was Emma's birthday. It had been for years. The laptop opened on the first try. I went straight to her work email, searching for anything related to Skybound or Derek Paulson. She'd been careful. Most messages had been deleted. But I found fragments in her trash folder, emails she'd forgotten to permanently erase. One from Derek, sent 4 months ago. Thanks for handling the NA23 situation. You saved us 40 Ks in unnecessary repairs. Dinner Friday? Another from 6 months back. The brake sensors are overly sensitive on that model. Your professional judgment that they're within acceptable parameters is appreciated. A third from a year ago. You're amazing. In every way. Can't wait for Cancun. Cancun. She'd told me that was a work conference. I'd stayed home with the girls. I kept digging. Found a folder labeled Backup Reports with original inspection documents. The real ones before she'd modified them. Aircraft that should have been grounded. Parts that needed replacement. Systems that failed safety checks. Next to each original report was a revised version. Same aircraft, same date, but all the problems had vanished. Everything marked as compliant, airworthy, approved. Jessica's signature on every falsified document. I copied everything to a flash drive. The emails, the original reports, the falsified versions. Then I cross-referenced the tail numbers with flight records, passenger manifests, route schedules. Built a spreadsheet showing exactly which planes had flown with which violations, how many passengers had been at risk, what the potential consequences could have been. 14 aircraft total. Hundreds of flights. Thousands of passengers. All so Derek Paulson could save money on maintenance and maximize profits. All while sleeping with the inspector who was supposed to keep his plane safe. I thought about confronting Jessica, demanding an explanation. But what would she say? That she loved him? That the safety violations weren't that serious? That I was overreacting? No. This was bigger than our marriage. People's lives were at stake. I opened a new browser window and found the FAA's Office of Inspector General hotline. They investigated allegations of misconduct, fraud, and safety violations. I read through their procedures, the information they needed, how reports were handled. Then I looked up the National Transportation Safety Board's reporting system and the Department of Transportation's Inspector General Office. I would need to report this to all of them, provide evidence, make sure it couldn't be buried or ignored. But first, I needed to secure everything, make copies, store them in multiple locations. If Jessica found out I knew, she might try to destroy evidence. Derek Paulson had money and lawyers. They'd fight back. I made 3 copies of the flash drive, uploaded everything to a secure cloud storage account Jessica didn't know about, emailed encrypted files to myself at a personal address separate from our family account. Then I sat in my office, staring at the evidence of my wife's crimes, and tried to decide what kind of man I was going to be. The kind who protected his family, kept quiet, looked the other way, or the kind who did the right thing, even if it destroyed everything. I picked up my phone and dialed the FAA Inspector General's hotline. A woman answered on the second ring. Office of Inspector General, how may I help you? I need to report aviation safety violations, I said. Federal inspector falsifying safety reports. Passengers at risk. I'll connect you with an investigator. Please hold. There was no going back now. The hold music clicked off. Inspector General's office, this is Special Agent Kimberly Walsh. How can I help you? My mouth went dry. I'd rehearsed this in my head a dozen times while waiting, but now the words felt heavy, dangerous. Once I said them, there was no taking them back. My name is Ryan Caldwell. I need to report systematic safety violations at Skybound Airways. I have evidence that FAA Inspector Jessica Caldwell has been falsifying safety inspection reports in exchange for… I paused, the word sticking in my throat. In exchange for personal favors from the airline's CEO. Silence on the other end. Then, Mr. Caldwell, are you saying you have evidence of an FAA inspector accepting bribes? Yes. And evidence that aircraft with serious safety violations have been cleared to fly with passengers aboard. I'm going to need you to hold while I transfer you to our aviation safety hotline. Don't hang up. More hold music. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Through my office window, I could see Patricia at her desk, completely unaware that I was burning my marriage to the ground 30 feet away. Mr. Caldwell? This is Senior Special Agent Thomas Garrett. I understand you have information about safety violations at Skybound Airways. This agent's voice was different, sharper, more focused. I heard typing in the background. Yes, I have documentation showing that Inspector Jessica Caldwell approved 14 aircraft with known safety deficiencies over the past 18 months. Hydraulic systems, brake assemblies, overdue maintenance cycles. The original inspection reports show the violations. The filed reports show everything as compliant. And how did you obtain these documents, Mr. Caldwell? The question I'd been dreading. Jessica Caldwell is my wife. I found the files on her laptop. More typing. I see. And what's your relationship to Skybound Airways? None. I'm a financial analyst. I have no connection to the airline industry. Why are you coming forward with this information? I closed my eyes. Because thousands of people have been flying on unsafe aircraft. Because it's the right thing to do. Because my wife betrayed me in every possible way. I didn't add. Mr. Caldwell, I'm going to need you to bring all the evidence you have to our Portland field office. Can you come in today? I looked at the clock. 4:17 p.m. The girls get home at 5. Tomorrow morning then, 9 a.m. Do you still have access to the original documents? I have copies, digital and printed. Bring everything. And Mr. Caldwell, don't discuss this with anyone, including your wife. Do you understand? If she becomes aware of an investigation, she could destroy evidence. I understand. One more question. Do you know if any incidents or accidents have occurred involving these aircraft? My stomach dropped. I hadn't even thought about that. I don't know. The records I have just show the inspection dates and the violations that were overlooked. We'll look into it. 9 a.m. tomorrow, Portland Field Office on S.W. McAdam Avenue. Ask for me specifically, Senior Special Agent Thomas Garrett. And Mr. Caldwell, you did the right thing calling us. I hung up and sat staring at my computer screen without seeing it. The right thing. It didn't feel right. It felt like I'd just detonated a bomb that would destroy everything. My marriage, my family, my daughter's lives. But those passengers, all those people who'd boarded skybound flights thinking they were safe, trusting that someone had checked, that the systems worked, that nobody would gamble with their lives for profit or passion. I pulled up Skybound's website and navigated to their fleet information. 14 aircraft. I cross-referenced the tail numbers from Jessica's files with their current flight schedules. N847SB was in the air right now. Seattle to Phoenix. The plane with the hydraulic pressure issue that Jessica had cleared 3 months ago. 163 passengers, according to the seat map. N923SB was scheduled to depart Portland at 6:15 p.m., Los Angeles bound, the one with brake assembly problems from January. I felt sick. My phone buzzed. Jessica. Running late, probably home by 6:30. Can you pick up the girls? I stared at the message. She was probably with Derek right now, in some hotel room, while aircraft with faulty brakes taxied down runways and hydraulic systems strained at 30,000 feet. Sure, I typed back. See you at home. I shut down my computer and grabbed my jacket. Patricia looked up as I passed her desk. Heading out early? Have to get the girls, family stuff, she smiled. Tell Emma and Lily I said hi. The elementary school parking lot was already filling up when I arrived at 4:50 p.m. I pulled into a spot near the pickup zone and waited, watching parents chat with each other, completely absorbed in their normal lives. Nobody looking at me would guess that I'd spent my lunch hour discovering my wife was corrupt, and my afternoon reporting her to federal investigators. Emma appeared first, her backpack nearly as big as she was, Lily trailing behind. They climbed into the back seat in a flurry of motion and noise. "Daddy, you picked us up." "Mommy said Grandma was coming." "Grandma had to cancel," I lied, pulling out of the parking lot. "So you're stuck with me." "Can we get ice cream?" Lily asked immediately. "It's Tuesday," Emma said with 7-year-old authority. "We only get ice cream on Fridays." "Maybe we can make an exception," I heard myself say. Because maybe this was one of the last normal afternoons we'd have before everything fell apart. Before they learned their mother was going to prison and their father had put her there. We stopped at Scoops on Maple Street. The girls got their usual, Emma's mint chip, Lily's strawberry, and I got nothing, just watch them eat and laugh and argue about whose scoop was bigger. Normal kid stuff. Innocent. Emma looked up at me, green eyes so much like Jessica's. "Are you sad, Daddy?" "No, sweetheart, just tired." "You look sad." "Kids saw too much." "I'm fine. Finish your ice cream." We got home at 5:45 p.m. The girls scattered to their rooms while I stood in the kitchen, looking at the same granite countertops, the same family photos on the refrigerator, the same coffee maker Jessica had used that morning before driving to wherever she really went. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd taken of her files. Scrolled through the evidence one more time, making sure it was real, that I hadn't imagined it. Aircraft N847SB. Hydraulic pressure fluctuations noted during inspection. Original report, fail, do not clear for service. Filed report, all systems nominal, cleared for passenger service. Aircraft N620SB. Brake assembly wear exceeding manufacturer specifications. Original report. Fail. Immediate maintenance required. Filed report. Brake systems within acceptable parameters, cleared for service. On and on. 14 aircraft, hundreds of flights, thousands of passengers. I heard Jessica's car in the driveway at 6:35 p.m. The front door opened. "Hey, I'm home. Sorry, I'm late." She walked into the kitchen, still in her work clothes. Navy blazer, slacks, the FAA inspector badge clipped to her belt. She looked tired but normal. Like someone coming home from a regular day at a regular job, not someone who'd spent the afternoon with her lover discussing which safety violations they could get away with this month. "Girls already eat?" she asked, setting her bag on the counter. "We got ice cream. They're upstairs." She smiled. "Ice cream on a Tuesday? What's the occasion?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman I'd loved for 8 years, who'd given me 2 daughters, who I'd trusted completely, who'd been lying to me for 18 months while endangering lives for profit and passion. "No occasion," I said. "Just felt like it." She moved closer, kissed my cheek. I forced myself not to pull away. Agent Garrett had said not to let her know. Not to give her time to destroy evidence. "You okay?" she asked. "You seem off." "Long day at work, quarterly projections." She nodded, accepting it, and turned to the refrigerator. "I'm starving. Think I'll heat up some of that leftover pasta." I watched her move around our kitchen, opening cabinets, pulling out a plate, completely at ease. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., I'd be sitting in a federal office handing over evidence that would destroy her career and send her to prison. Tonight, I had to pretend everything was normal. "How was your day?" I asked, the question automatic after years of marriage. She shrugged, putting pasta in the microwave. "Routine inspections, paperwork, the usual." Lies, all lies. "Which airline?" She glanced at me, and for just a second I saw something flicker in her eyes. Caution? Suspicion? "Skybound." "Why?" "Just curious." The microwave beeped. She pulled out her plate and sat at the kitchen table. Derek sends his regards, actually. Says he appreciates how thorough our inspections are. I bet he does, I thought. The morning air felt wrong, too crisp, too ordinary. I stood in the bathroom at 6:30 a.m., watching Jessica apply her makeup with the same practiced movements she'd used for years. Foundation, concealer, the bronze eyeshadow that matched her uniform. Big day? I asked, keeping my voice level. She met my eyes in the mirror. Just the usual inspections, nothing special. I knew better. I'd spent half the night reviewing the evidence I'd compiled, cross-referencing tail numbers with flight schedules. Skybound 447 was scheduled for a Seattle run at 11:15 a.m., one of the aircraft with compromised hydraulic systems that Jessica had cleared 3 weeks ago. What time will you be home? 6, maybe 7. Depends on how the paperwork goes. She capped her mascara, turned to face me. You okay? You seem tense. Quarterly reports, I said. Always stressful. She kissed my cheek and I felt nothing. No warmth, no connection. Just the mechanical press of lips against skin. After she left, I waited 15 minutes before checking her location. The blue dot moved steadily toward the regional airport where Skybound operated. Normal route, normal speed. Everything appearing exactly as it should. I made breakfast for Emma and Lily. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. Emma chattered about her upcoming field trip to the Science Museum. Lily wanted to wear her purple dress even though it was cold outside. Mom said I could, she insisted. Then wear it with your cardigan, I told her. These small moments felt surreal. My daughters eating breakfast, backpacks ready by the door, while I carried the weight of what I knew. In 4 hours, I'd be sitting across from federal investigators. In 4 hours, everything would change. I dropped the girls at school at 8:20 a.m. Emma waved from the entrance, her gap-toothed smile wide. Lily forgot her lunchbox and I had to chase her down, pressing it into her small hands. Thanks, Daddy, she said, then ran to catch up with her sister. I sat in my car for 3 minutes, watching them disappear into the building. Then I drove toward downtown Portland. The FAA Inspector General's office occupied the 7th floor of the federal building on Southwest 3rd Avenue. I'd been here once before, years ago, when Jessica first got her inspector certification. We'd met her supervisor, toured the offices, celebrated with dinner at a steakhouse nearby. Now I rode the elevator alone, carrying a leather messenger bag containing 2 flash drives, printed spreadsheets, and a timeline I'd constructed showing the correlation between Jessica's falsified reports and Derek Paulson's cost-cutting initiatives at Skybound. Agent Thomas Garrett met me in the lobby at 8:55 a.m. He looked exactly as he had on the phone. Mid-50s, gray hair, the kind of face that had seen too many violations and not enough accountability. Mr. Caldwell. His handshake was firm. Thank you for coming in. He led me through a maze of cubicles to a conference room with frosted glass walls. 2 other people waited inside, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a tablet, and a younger man in a suit who introduced himself as Special Agent Brandon Yates. The woman was Investigator Claire Brennan. No relation to my employer, she clarified with a slight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Let's begin, Garrett said, closing the door. I laid out everything. The flash drives contained the original inspection reports I'd found in Jessica's home office, the ones showing actual violations. I'd matched them against the official reports she'd filed with the FAA, highlighting the discrepancies in yellow. Aircraft N847SK, I said, pulling up the first comparison on my laptop. Original inspection dated January 15th shows hydraulic pressure inconsistencies in the primary flight control system. Jessica's official report filed January 17th shows full compliance. Brennan leaned forward, studying the documents. These are internal draft reports. How did you access them? My wife's home computer. I have legal access to our shared devices. Garrett made a note. Continue. I walked them through all 14 aircraft. The pattern was consistent. Jessica would conduct legitimate inspections, document violations in her preliminary reports, then file sanitized versions that cleared the aircraft for service. The dates aligned perfectly with her text message conversations with Derek, conversations where he'd referenced handling the paperwork and keeping things smooth. The financial correlation is significant, I said, displaying the spreadsheet I'd created. Skybound's maintenance expenditures dropped 34% over the 18 months this has been occurring. Their operating margins improved from 3.2% to 8.7%. Derek Paulson's compensation is directly tied to profitability metrics. Yates whistled softly. That's motive. That's conspiracy to commit fraud, Garrett corrected. He looked at me. How many flights have these aircraft completed since being falsely certified? I'd anticipated this question. Based on publicly available flight data, approximately 2,947 flights carrying an estimated 412,000 passengers. The room went quiet. Brennan broke the silence. Have there been any incidents? Any reports of mechanical issues? 3 emergency landings, I said. 2 for hydraulic problems, 1 for brake failure. All involving aircraft on this list. No crashes, no fatalities, yet. Garrett stood, paced to the window. We'll need to ground those aircraft immediately, all 14. That'll destroy Skybound, Yates said. That's not our concern. Garrett turned back to me. Mr. Caldwell, I need to ask you something directly. Does your wife know you're here? No. Where is she right now? I checked my phone. At the airport, Skybound's maintenance facility. Garrett exchanged glances with Brennan. She nodded once, then left the room with her phone already at her ear. We're going to execute search warrants within the hour, Garrett explained. Skybound's offices, their maintenance records, Derek Paulson's personal files. We'll also be interviewing your wife. My stomach tightened. She's going to know I reported this. Yes? Garrett's expression softened slightly. I understand this is difficult, but you've potentially saved lives. If one of those aircraft had gone down... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Brennan returned. Warrants are being prepared. We have agents ready to move on Skybound's headquarters and the maintenance facility. We're also coordinating with the U.S. Attorney's Office for criminal charges. What happens to Jessica? I heard myself ask. That depends on her cooperation, Garrett said. If she provides testimony against Paulson, if she's willing to detail the extent of the conspiracy, that could factor into sentencing. But Mr. Caldwell, you need to understand, your wife falsified federal safety documents. She endangered hundreds of thousands of people. She's facing serious prison time regardless. I nodded. I'd known this intellectually, but hearing it stated so plainly made it real in a way it hadn't been before. We'll need you to stay available, Garrett continued. The U.S. Attorney will likely want to meet with you. You may be called to testify before a grand jury. I understand. Yates gathered the documents. This evidence is solid, really solid. The timeline, the financial analysis, the message correlations. You've built a prosecutor's dream case. I didn't feel proud. I felt hollow. Brennan's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then at Garrett. Warrants are signed. Teams are moving now. It was 10:23 a.m. In 52 minutes, Skybound 447 was scheduled to depart for Seattle with 168 passengers aboard. An aircraft with hydraulic issues that Jessica had cleared for service 3 weeks ago. That flight, I said. The 11:15 to Seattle. It's one of the compromised aircraft. Garrett was already moving. Claire, get the tower on the line. Ground all Skybound departures immediately. The next 30 minutes blurred. Phone calls. Urgent conversations. Brennan coordinating with air traffic control while Yates contacted the U.S. attorney. Garrett spoke with someone at FAA headquarters, his voice sharp and authoritative. I sat in the conference room, watching through the frosted glass as federal agents moved with purpose. My phone buzzed twice, both times from work, Patricia asking where I was. I didn't respond. At 10:47 a.m., Garrett returned. All Skybound flights are grounded. The 14 aircraft in question are being impounded for immediate inspection. We have teams executing warrants at Skybound headquarters and the maintenance facility. Jessica, being detained for questioning as we speak. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the conference table. Mr. Caldwell, Garrett said quietly, you did the right thing. I know that doesn't make this easier, but you need to hear it. You did the right thing. I thought about Emma and Lily, sitting in their classrooms, unaware that their mother was being questioned by federal agents, unaware that their family was disintegrating in real time. What do I tell my daughters? I asked. Garrett had no answer for that. The call from Special Agent Garrett came 3 days later, just after 9 a.m. I was in my home office reviewing emails I'd been ignoring since this nightmare began. Mr. Caldwell, we need you to come to our field office this afternoon. 2 o'clock work for you? My stomach tightened. Has something happened? We've completed our initial analysis of the aircraft. I'd like to walk you through what we found. The drive to the FAA field office took 45 minutes. The building was a nondescript concrete structure near the airport, the kind of place you'd drive past without noticing. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed over gray carpeting and beige walls covered with aviation safety posters. Garrett met me in the lobby. He looked like he hadn't slept much either. His tie was loosened, and there were coffee stains on his shirt cuff. Thanks for coming in, he said, shaking my hand. We've got a lot to cover. He led me down a corridor to a conference room where 2 other people waited. A woman in her 50s with steel gray hair introduced herself as Linda Hayes from the Department of Transportation Inspector General's office. The other was a younger man, maybe 30, who Garrett identified as Kevin Walsh, an aviation maintenance specialist. The conference table was covered with documents, photographs, and what looked like mechanical parts. Before we begin, Garrett said, I want you to understand that what I'm about to show you is part of an ongoing criminal investigation. Everything discussed here is confidential. I nodded. Walsh pulled out a laptop and turned it toward me. The screen showed a photograph of an aircraft landing gear assembly, metal components spread across what looked like a hangar floor. This is from Skybound aircraft N847SK, Walsh said. A Boeing 737-800. According to your wife's inspection report from February 14th, this aircraft passed all safety requirements with no deficiencies noted. He clicked to the next image. The photo showed a brake assembly with visible cracks running through the metal housing. These are stress fractures in the main brake housing, Walsh continued. They're not something that develops overnight. Based on metallurgical analysis, these cracks had been propagating for at least 8 months, Any competent inspector would have caught this during a routine check. My hands felt cold. How bad is it? If this brake assembly had failed during landing, especially in wet conditions, the aircraft would have been unable to stop properly. We're talking about a runway overrun scenario, possible loss of directional control. He paused. 73 people were on that aircraft's last flight before we grounded it. Linda Hayes opened a folder. That's just one example. We've found similar issues across all 14 aircraft. Hydraulic systems with leaking seals that were documented by maintenance crews but never flagged for mandatory replacement. Engine mounts with corrosion that exceeded safety limits. Fire suppression systems that hadn't been properly tested in over a year. She slid a stack of documents toward me. I recognized Jessica's handwriting on the inspection forms. Your wife signed off on all of these, Hayes said. Every single inspection report indicated full compliance with federal aviation regulations. But when we cross-referenced with the actual maintenance logs, the ones Skybound kept internally, we found over 60 documented deficiencies that were never reported to the FAA. Garrett leaned forward. We've also been analyzing the financial records you provided. Skybound's maintenance budget was cut by $2.8 million over the 18-month period your wife was conducting inspections. That money went straight to Derek Paulson's compensation package and shareholder dividends. I stared at the photographs, trying to process what I was seeing. You said there were 3 emergency landings. Were there others? Walsh nodded grimly. We've identified 7 additional incidents that were classified as routine mechanical issues, but should have triggered mandatory safety investigations. A hydraulic failure on approach to Denver. An engine fire warning light that wouldn't clear. 2 separate incidents of landing gear that took multiple attempts to deploy. Jesus Christ. We're working with the NTSB to review every flight operated by those 14 aircraft, Garrett said. If we find any accidents or incidents that can be directly linked to the safety violations, additional charges will follow. Hayes pulled out another document. We executed a search warrant on Derek Paulson's home and office yesterday. We found evidence of systematic fraud going back further than we initially thought. Your wife wasn't the first inspector he compromised. That caught me off guard. What? We found records of payments to 2 other FAA inspectors over the past 4 years. Cash transfers disguised as consulting fees. Both inspectors have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. She looked at me directly. Your wife's case is the most egregious because of the volume of violations and the direct evidence of the relationship, but Paulson has been running this scheme for a while. My mind raced. So this was calculated. He targeted her specifically. We believe so, Garrett said. Jessica's inspection territory included Skybound's main maintenance facility. She had direct authority over their certificate of airworthiness renewals. Paulson needed someone in that exact position. I thought about the timeline. 18 months ago. That was right after Jessica had received her promotion to senior inspector. She'd been so proud, celebrated with champagne, and talked about how this was the recognition she'd worked for. And Derek Paulson had seen an opportunity. Where is she now? I asked. Federal detention facility in Portland, Hayes said. She's been formally charged with falsifying federal documents, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and 14 counts of reckless endangerment. Her attorney is pushing for a plea deal. What kind of deal? Garrett exchanged a look with Hayes. That's not really something we can discuss with you, but I'll say this. The U.S. Attorney's Office is very interested in building the strongest possible case against Derek Paulson. If your wife cooperates fully, provides testimony about how the scheme operated, that could factor into sentencing recommendations. The implication was clear. Jessica could reduce her prison time by turning on Derek. What about the airline? I asked. Skybound's operating certificate has been suspended indefinitely, Hayes said. They've filed for bankruptcy protection. Their insurance carriers are already facing lawsuits from passengers who were on those aircraft. We're talking about potential liability in the hundreds of millions. Walsh pulled up another image on his laptop. This one showed a crowded airport terminal, passengers standing near a departure board filled with red, canceled notifications. Skybound operated 127 daily flights across 43 cities, he said. All of them grounded. About 15,000 passengers were stranded when we issued the emergency order. The ripple effects are still playing out. I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed. I'd known the safety violations were serious. I'd seen the reports, understood the risks. But seeing the actual damaged components, hearing the scope of the fraud, knowing how many people had been in danger, it made everything real in a way that numbers on a page couldn't. There's one more thing, Garrett said. He pulled out a sealed envelope. This arrived at our office this morning. It's addressed to you. I took the envelope. My name was written on the front in Jessica's handwriting. We've already reviewed it, Garrett said. Nothing in there affects the investigation, but she asked us to make sure you received it. I stared at the envelope, not opening it. You don't have to read it now, Hayes said gently. I slipped it into my jacket pocket. What happens next? We continue gathering evidence, Garrett said. We're interviewing every maintenance worker who flagged deficiencies that your wife ignored. We're reviewing communications between Paulson and Jessica. We're building a timeline of every decision that put passenger safety at risk. And we'll need you to testify, Hayes added. When this goes to trial, your analysis of the financial records and your testimony about discovering the affair will be crucial to establishing motive and pattern of behavior. I nodded slowly. Whatever you need. The meeting lasted another hour. They walked me through additional evidence, explained the legal process ahead, answered my questions about what would happen to Skybound's employees and the passengers who'd been affected. When I finally left the building, the sun was bright overhead, almost mocking. I sat in my car in the parking lot, engine off, and pulled out the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Jessica's handwriting covering both sides. I started reading. The envelope sat on my kitchen table, Jessica's handwriting unmistakable across the front. Just my name. Ryan. Special Agent Garrett had delivered it personally that morning, 3 days after Jessica's arrest. He'd stood in my doorway, the same measured expression he'd worn throughout this entire nightmare. She wanted you to have this, he'd said. We reviewed it. Nothing that compromises the investigation. I'd thanked him and closed the door. That was 4 hours ago. The girls were at school. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I'd made coffee, let it go cold, made more. Walked past the envelope a dozen times, sat down twice, stood back up. Finally, at 11:47 a.m., I opened it. The letter was 2 pages, handwritten on standard notebook paper. Her penmanship was neat, controlled, the same way she'd written grocery lists and birthday cards. Ryan, I know you won't forgive me. I'm not asking you to. I'm not even asking you to believe me. But I need you to know how this happened, because Emma and Lily deserve a father who understands the truth, even if they can never know it themselves. It started 18 months ago. Derek's airline was failing. He approached me at an industry conference in Denver. You remember, the one where I extended my trip by 2 days. He told me Skybound was going under unless he could reduce maintenance costs. He said he'd done the analysis, that the FAA requirements were excessive, that the margins built into safety protocols were wasteful. He showed me data. Real engineering reports suggesting certain maintenance intervals could be extended without meaningful risk. He made it sound reasonable, scientific, like we were correcting bureaucratic overreach, not endangering lives. I didn't approve anything dangerous that first time. Just extended an inspection interval by a few weeks on one aircraft. Minor stuff. The kind of thing that happens in the industry more than you'd think. But then he came back, and the requests got bigger. And somewhere in there, we crossed a line that wasn't professional anymore. I'm not blaming him. I made every choice. I signed every report. I knew what I was doing was wrong, and I did it anyway. The affair and the fraud, they fed each other. I was already compromised, so what was one more violation? One more lie? By the time I realized how far I'd gone, I couldn't see a way back. If I stopped, Derek would expose me. If I confessed, I'd lose everything. You, the girls, my career, my freedom. So I kept going, kept telling myself it would be fine, that the safety margins really were excessive, that I was just adjusting standards. I told myself that lie until federal agents were at our door. You did the right thing reporting me. I mean that. When I think about those 412,000 passengers, those families who trusted that their aircraft were safe, I can't breathe. The hydraulic system on N847SK that I approved? Investigators found metal shavings in the fluid reservoir. That plane was 6 flights from total hydraulic failure. 6 flights from falling out of the sky with 189 people on board. I did that. Not Derek. Me. I signed my name certifying that aircraft was airworthy when I knew it wasn't. The prosecutors offered me a deal yesterday. 15 years if I testify against Derek and the other inspectors he compromised. 25 if I don't. My attorney says I should take it. That Derek will throw me under the bus anyway, claim I acted alone, that he had no idea I was falsifying reports. She's probably right, but I haven't decided yet. I need you to know that what I felt for you was real. Is real. The life we built, our daughters, the home we made, that wasn't a lie. The person who married you in that garden in Portland, who held your hand in the delivery room twice, who cried when we bought the house. She was real. She just wasn't strong enough when it mattered. Tell Emma and Lily I love them. When they're old enough to ask questions, tell them their mother made terrible choices but that she loved them every single day. Don't let them think this is their fault. Don't let them grow up wondering if they could have changed anything. And Ryan, I know this doesn't matter now, but I'm sorry. Not just for getting caught. For all of it. For risking those lives. For destroying our family. For making you the person who had to turn me in. You deserved better than me. Jessica. I read it twice, then a third time. My hands weren't shaking. I wasn't crying. I just felt empty. Like someone had scooped out everything inside and left a shell. The woman who wrote this letter was a stranger. But she was also the person I'd shared a bed with for 8 years. Both things were true. Both things were impossible. My phone buzzed. A text from my attorney, Philip Grant. Prosecutors want to meet. They have questions about the timeline. Can you come in tomorrow at 2? I typed back, yes. Another text, this one from Emma's school. Reminder, parent-teacher conferences next week. Please sign up for a time slot. Normal life, continuing. The world didn't stop because mine had imploded. I folded Jessica's letter and put it back in the envelope. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the document I'd been working on for the past 3 days. It was a timeline. Every piece of evidence I'd found, organized chronologically. Phone records, credit card statements, falsified inspection reports. I'd cross-referenced everything, built a narrative that prosecutors could follow from the first compromised inspection to the final fraudulent certification. Special Agent Garrett had asked for it. Said my financial analysis skills had given them a roadmap they wouldn't have had otherwise. The correlation between Jessica's inspections and Derek's profit margins. The pattern of violations increasing in severity. The way maintenance costs dropped precisely when safety certifications became more frequent. I'd built the case that would send my wife to federal prison. The cursor blinked on the screen. I had 3 more sections to complete. Bank records showing suspicious deposits to Jessica's personal account. A breakdown of which specific safety violations pose the greatest risk to passenger safety. A summary of how the fraud could have been prevented if FAA oversight had been more robust. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Mr. Caldwell, this is Rebecca Stone. I'm an attorney representing the passenger advocacy group Citizens for Aviation Safety. Do you have a few minutes? I'm not sure I should be talking to you without my lawyer present. I understand. I'm not looking for testimony or evidence. I'm calling because we're organizing a civil lawsuit against Skybound Airways, and we wanted to inform you that you may be called as a witness, given your role in uncovering the fraud. I closed my eyes. How many passengers are involved? We've identified 3,947 individuals who flew on the 14 compromised aircraft during the period of fraudulent certification. We're seeking damages for emotional distress, endangerment, and negligent infliction of emotional harm. That's not all 12,000 passengers. No, many don't know yet. We're starting with those who've come forward. But Mr. Caldwell, that number will grow. When people learn they were on planes that could have crashed, that their lives were at risk because an airline chose profits over safety, the scope of this litigation will be unprecedented. What do you need from me? Nothing right now. Just wanted you to be aware. Your documentation has been invaluable to federal prosecutors. It may be equally valuable in civil proceedings. We'll be in touch through proper channels. She hung up. I sat there staring at my laptop screen. 3,147 people. That was just the beginning. Eventually, everyone who'd flown on those aircraft would know. Would understand that they'd been in danger, that their trust had been violated. And my wife had done that. The woman who'd kissed our daughters goodnight had spent her days certifying death traps. The front door opened. I jumped, adrenaline spiking. Ryan, it's just me. My sister, Lauren. I'd given her a key last week, after everything fell apart. She'd been checking on me, making sure I was eating, functioning. She walked into the kitchen carrying grocery bags. I brought food. Real food, not the takeout containers I keep finding in your trash. Thanks. She started unpacking. Chicken, vegetables, bread. You look terrible. When's the last time you slept? I sleep. That's not what I asked. I didn't answer. She sighed and put a hand on my shoulder. The girls come home in 3 hours. You need to pull yourself together before then. They're already confused about why their mother isn't here. They don't need to see you falling apart too. I'm not falling apart. You're reading her letter for the fourth time, and you haven't moved from that chair since I texted you an hour ago. I looked down. The envelope was in my hand again. I didn't remember picking it up. Lauren took it gently and set it aside. Whatever she said, it doesn't change what happens next. You focus on Emma and Lily. Let the prosecutors handle Jessica. She's facing 15 to 25 years. Good. Lauren. No. Her voice was sharp. She endangered hundreds of thousands of people. She committed federal crimes. She betrayed you and those girls. Whatever consequences she faces, she earned them. I knew she was right. But it didn't make it easier. My phone buzzed again. Special Agent Garrett. Update. Derek Paulson's attorney contacted us. He's willing to provide information about the other compromised inspectors in exchange for reduced charges. Thought you should know. So it was starting. The dominoes falling. Derek would testify against Jessica. Jessica would testify against Derek. The other inspectors would be exposed. The whole corrupt system would collapse. And I'd be the one who pushed the first piece. The call came at 7:23 a.m. on a Thursday, 3 weeks after Jessica's arrest. I was making breakfast for the girls, scrambled eggs and toast, the same thing I'd made every morning since their mother disappeared from their lives. Emma sat at the kitchen table working on her spelling homework, while Lily colored a picture of what she said was our family. She'd drawn 3 people, not 4. Mr. Caldwell, this is Special Agent Garrett. Do you have a few minutes? I turned down the burner and stepped into the hallway. What's happened? Jessica accepted the plea agreement yesterday evening. 15 years, testimony against Paulson, and full cooperation with the ongoing investigation. Her attorney notified us at 6 p.m. I leaned against the wall. 15 years. Emma would be 22 when her mother got out. Lily would be 20. Their entire childhoods gone. There's more, Garrett continued. Derek Paulson's attorney made good on his offer. He provided names of 2 additional FAA inspectors who'd been compromised, along with documentation of payments. We executed warrants this morning at 5 a.m. Who were they? Kenneth Wright, based out of our Dallas office. Been with the FAA for 19 years. And Michelle Torres in Denver, 12 years of service. Both took payments ranging from $8,000 to $45,000 over the past 4 years to approve aircraft with documented safety deficiencies. I did the math automatically. 3 inspectors, 4 years, multiple airlines potentially. How many aircraft? We're still determining the full scope. Wright was responsible for inspecting regional carriers operating throughout Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. Torres covered Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana. Preliminary analysis suggests at least 32 additional aircraft may have been fraudulently certified. The eggs were burning. I could smell them from the hallway. I need to call you back. One more thing. The NTSB contacted us yesterday. They're reopening investigation into skybound Flight 1847, the emergency landing in Phoenix last April. You remember? The aircraft that lost hydraulic pressure during descent. They're examining whether that incident was directly related to the falsified inspection reports. Flight 1847. I remembered it from the news. The plane had landed safely, but it had been close. 163 people aboard. They're also looking at a runway excursion in Boise, involving one of Wright's approved aircraft, and a pressurization failure on a Torres-certified plane over Denver. Nobody died in any of these incidents, but the preliminary assessment suggests all 3 were preventable with proper maintenance and inspection protocols. Emma called from the kitchen. Dad, Something smoking. I have to go, I said. I scraped the ruined eggs into the trash and started over. The girls didn't comment. They'd gotten used to my distraction, my mistakes, the way I sometimes stood at the counter staring at nothing. My sister Claire had been staying with us since the arrest, sleeping in the guest room and helping with school pickups and bedtime routines. She worked remotely as a software developer, which gave her flexibility. Without her, I would have fallen apart completely. She came downstairs at 7:45, already dressed, laptop bag over her shoulder. Jessica took the plea, I said quietly, while the girls finished breakfast in the next room. Claire's expression didn't change. How long? 15 years. She poured coffee, added cream, stirred it precisely 3 times, a habit she'd had since college. And you're going to tell them what? I don't know. You need to figure it out. Emma's been asking questions. She's 7, Ryan. She's smart. She knows her mother didn't just go on a work trip. I'd told them Jessica had to go away for work, a special assignment that would take a long time. It was weak, and I knew it. But what else could I say? Your mother endangered hundreds of thousands of people because she was sleeping with her boss and wanted to help him make money. The FAA found 2 more inspectors, I said. Same thing Jessica was doing, approving unsafe aircraft for money. Claire set down her mug. How widespread is this? They don't know yet. At least 32 more planes. 3 incidents under investigation that might be connected to the fraud. Jesus. Emma appeared in the doorway, backpack already on. Can we go? I don't want to be late. I drove them to school in silence. Lily sang to herself in the back seat, some song from a cartoon I didn't recognize. Emma stared out the window, her face reflected in the glass, looking older than 7. At the drop-off line, Emma unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't get out immediately. Is Mom in trouble? She asked. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Why do you ask that? Because you're sad all the time, and Aunt Claire is living with us. And Mom's been gone for 3 weeks and she hasn't called. Behind us, another parent honked. The line was moving. Mom made some mistakes at work, I said carefully. She has to fix them. It's going to take a while. What kind of mistakes? Complicated ones, adult ones. We'll talk about it more when you're older. I'm not a baby. I know you're not, sweetheart. But some things are hard to explain and I don't want to explain them wrong, okay? She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded and climbed out. Lily followed, waving goodbye through the window. I watched them walk into the building, Emma holding Lily's hand, and wondered how many more times I'd have to lie to them. At work, I couldn't focus. The quarterly report sat open on my laptop, numbers blurring together. Patricia knocked on my door at 10:30. Ryan, the staff meeting starts in 5 minutes. I'd forgotten completely. Right, thanks. The meeting lasted an hour. I contributed nothing, nodded at appropriate moments, took notes I'd never read. My boss, David, caught me afterward in the hallway. You doing okay? You seem somewhere else lately. Family stuff, I said. It's complicated. Take whatever time you need, seriously. We can cover your accounts. I nodded, knowing I wouldn't take time off. Work was the only thing keeping me from thinking about Jessica in a federal detention center, about the girls growing up without their mother, about the fact that I'd destroyed my own family by doing the right thing. My phone buzzed at 2:15 p.m. Unknown number. Mr. Caldwell? This is attorney Rebecca Walsh. I represent the passenger advocacy group organizing civil litigation against Skybound Airways and the individuals involved in the safety fraud. Do you have a moment? I stepped outside into the parking lot. I'm listening. We now have 8,014 plaintiffs signed on to the class action lawsuit. That number is growing daily as we identify additional passengers who flew on the compromised aircraft. The suit names Skybound Airways, Derek Paulson personally, Jessica Caldwell, Kenneth Wright, and Michelle Torres as defendants. Jessica doesn't have any money, I said. We have a house with equity and some retirement savings, but nothing substantial. The primary target is Skybound's insurance carriers and Paulson's personal assets. However, all defendants bear legal responsibility. I'm calling because we wanted to inform you that your wife's acceptance of the plea agreement strengthens our case significantly. Her testimony will establish willful negligence and criminal intent, which opens the door to punitive damages. A car pulled into the space next to mine. A young woman got out, talking on her phone, laughing about something. Normal life, continuing around me. How much are we talking about? I asked. Conservatively, $40 to $60 million across all plaintiffs. Potentially much higher if we can definitively link any of the 3 incidents under investigation to the fraudulent inspections. If someone had died, we'd be looking at wrongful death claims in excess of $200 million. Someone had almost died. Multiple someones. 163 people on Flight 1847. The passengers in Boise, the Denver pressurization failure. The house is in both our names, I said. Joint ownership. We're aware. Our research indicates you had no knowledge of the fraud and reported it to federal authorities. We have no intention of pursuing your assets. However, Jessica's share of marital property is potentially subject to judgment. So I could lose the house. It's possible, depending on how the court structures the settlement. I'd recommend consulting with a family law attorney about protecting your interests during the divorce proceedings. Oregon is an equitable distribution state, which gives you some options. After she hung up, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, watching people come and go. Normal people with normal problems. Traffic tickets and difficult bosses and arguments about whose turn it was to do the dishes. My phone rang again. Claire. The school called, she said. Emma got into a fight at recess. They want you to come pick her up. A fight? Emma? She punched another girl in the face, gave her a bloody nose. Emma had never been in a fight in her life. She was the kid who cried when other children argued, who brought home injured insects to rehabilitate. I'm on my way, I said. The call came at 7:23 a.m. on a Thursday, 3 weeks after Jessica's sentencing. Mr. Caldwell, this is Special Agent Garrett. We need to talk about Flight 1847. I set down my coffee mug. Emma and Lily were still asleep upstairs. What about it? The NTSB finished their analysis. The hydraulic failure wasn't a failure. It was deferred maintenance. He paused. Your wife signed off on that aircraft 6 days before the incident. The inspection report says the hydraulic system was fully compliant. The actual maintenance logs show 3 documented leaks that were never repaired. My hands went cold. How bad? The pilot had about 90 seconds of hydraulic pressure left when they landed. If they'd been over the Rockies instead of approaching Denver, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. Jesus. There's more. We pulled the black box data from the Boise runway excursion. The thrust reversers on the right engine didn't deploy. They'd been flagged for replacement 4 months earlier. Michelle Torres signed the inspection report 3 weeks before the incident, marking them as operational. I walked to the window. The sun was coming up over the neighbor's fence. Everything looked normal. Everything looked safe. How many people were on those flights? Flight 1847 had 183 passengers and crew. The Boise flight had 142. His voice was flat, professional. We're treating both incidents as criminal negligence resulting in endangerment. The U.S. Attorney is reviewing whether to file additional charges. Against Jessica? Against all three inspectors, and Derek Paulson. Papers rustled on his end. Mr. Caldwell, I need you to understand something. Your wife's fraud didn't just risk lives. It directly caused two near-catastrophic failures. If either pilot had made a single mistake, if the weather had been worse, if they'd been at different altitudes, we'd be talking about mass casualties. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where Jessica and I had eaten breakfast 1,000 times, where we'd helped Emma with her homework, where Lily had drawn pictures of our family in crayon. What happens now? The U.S. Attorney wants to amend the charges, add reckless endangerment, criminal negligence, conspiracy to commit fraud. Jessica's plea deal covers the falsification charges, but these are new, based on actual incidents with documented harm. Will she get more time? Possibly. Depends on whether she cooperates. He cleared his throat. There's something else. We found communications between Derek Paulson and someone at the FAA's regional office. Not an inspector, someone in administration. We think there might be a fourth person involved. Someone who helped cover the paper trail. I closed my eyes. How deep does this go? We don't know yet. But Mr. Caldwell, I'm calling because the U.S. Attorney wants to interview you again. They're building the enhanced case, and your documentation is crucial. Can you come to Portland tomorrow? What time? 10 a.m. Federal Building. Same office as before. After we hung up, I sat there for 20 minutes. The coffee got cold. Upstairs, I heard Emma's alarm go off, the sound of small feet hitting the floor. Normal life, continuing. Except nothing was normal anymore. The U.S. Attorney's name was Patricia Brennan. Mid-40s, gray suit, reading glasses on a chain. She had 3 banker's boxes of documents spread across the conference table. Mr. Caldwell, thank you for coming. She gestured to a chair. Special Agent Garrett sat to her left. A younger man in a navy suit sat to her right. This is Assistant U.S. Attorney James Cooper. He's handling the criminal negligence aspects. I shook hands and sat down. Brennan opened the first box. We've spent the last 3 weeks reconstructing the maintenance history of every aircraft your wife inspected. What we found is worse than we initially thought. She pulled out a thick binder. Flight 1847, Boeing 737-800, registration number N2847SK. Your wife conducted the annual inspection on March 3rd. She certified the hydraulic system as airworthy. She slid a document across the table. This is the actual maintenance log from Skybound's contractor. It shows 3 hydraulic leaks documented between January and March. None were repaired. The contractor flagged the aircraft as non-airworthy on February 28th. I read the document. The contractor's signature was clear. The date was clear. The recommendation: aircraft should be grounded until repairs completed. Jessica inspected it anyway, 5 days later, and certified it as safe. Brennan pulled out another document. Here's her inspection report. Quote, hydraulic systems inspected and tested. All components within normal parameters. No leaks detected. Aircraft approved for service. Cooper leaned forward. Mr. Caldwell, we've interviewed the contractor. He says he personally spoke with your wife about the leaks. Told her the aircraft needed immediate repairs. She told him to revise his report. He revised it. No, he refused. So Skybound fired him and hired a different contractor. Cooper slid another document across. This contractor, company called Aerotech Solutions, has done work for Skybound for 6 months. Every single inspection report from them shows perfect compliance. No issues, no repairs needed. They're falsifying too? We think so. We're investigating them separately. Brennan tapped the table. But here's what matters for your wife's case. She knew about the leaks. She was told the aircraft was unsafe, and she certified it anyway. I stared at the documents. The passengers on that flight had no idea they were flying on an aircraft that had been flagged as non-airworthy. Brennan's voice was hard. The pilot had no idea. The flight attendants had no idea. Only your wife, Derek Paulson, and whoever at Aerotech falsified that final report. Garrett pulled out his laptop. We've also traced communications between your wife and Derek Paulson. Text messages mostly. They used a messaging app that deletes after 24 hours, but we recovered data from the servers. He turned the laptop toward me. The messages were brief. Clinical. Derek. 1847 needs to fly Saturday. Can you clear it? Jessica. Contractor flagged hydraulics. Needs work. Derek. How much? Jessica. $40K minimum, maybe more. Derek. Too expensive, sign it off. Jessica. It's not safe. Derek. Baby, we've been through this. These contractors are overly cautious, it's fine. Jessica. If something happens. Derek. Nothing will happen. Trust me. I'll make it worth your while. There was a gap of 6 hours. Then. Jessica. Done. But this is the last time. Derek. You're amazing. See you tonight. I pushed the laptop away. She knew. She knew, Brennan confirmed. And she did it anyway. That's criminal negligence. That's reckless endangerment. And if we can prove she took money or other compensation for this specific act, it's bribery. Did she? Cooper opened another binder. Derek Paulson paid for a weekend trip to Napa Valley 3 days after that inspection. Booked under his name. 2 guests. We have hotel records, restaurant receipts, spa charges. Total cost, $4,800. That's the compensation. Part of it. We're still tracking financial records. He flipped pages. But the trip alone establishes a pattern. She certifies an unsafe aircraft. He rewards her with an expensive weekend. That's quid pro quo. Brennan folded her hands. Mr. Caldwell, we're amending the charges against your wife. The new indictment will include 6 counts of reckless endangerment, 3 counts of criminal negligence, and 2 counts of accepting bribes. Each count carries additional prison time. How much additional? If convicted on all counts? 20 to 30 years, consecutive to her current sentence. She met my eyes. Your wife could be looking at 45 years in federal prison. The room was quiet. Through the window, I could see downtown Portland. People walking to work, cars in traffic, normal life. What do you need from me? Your testimony, your documentation, and… Brennan hesitated. We need you to understand that this is going to get worse before it gets better. The media will cover the new charges. The victims' families are already organizing. There will be congressional hearings about FAA oversight. Your wife's name will be everywhere. It already is. Not like this. This is attempted mass murder territory. This is putting profits over hundreds of lives. She closed the binder. I need to know you're prepared for that. I thought about Emma and Lily, about the questions they'd ask, about the kids at school who'd see their mother's face on the news. I'm prepared, I said. What do you need? 3 years have passed since I sat in that conference room and watched my marriage, my family, and everything I thought I knew dissolve into evidence bags and federal indictments. Jessica is serving her sentence at FCI Victorville in California. The final tally was 38 years. The judge called her actions a betrayal of public trust so profound that it shakes the foundation of aviation safety. Derek Paulson got 42 years. Kenneth Wright and Michelle Torres received 25 and 22 years respectively. Aerotech Solutions was dissolved, its principals facing their own criminal charges. Skybound Airways ceased to exist 16 months after the scandal broke. The bankruptcy proceedings are still ongoing. The civil lawsuit settled for $93 million, distributed among 287 passengers who'd flown on compromised aircraft. I signed over Jessica's share of our house as part of the judgment. The girls and I live in a smaller place now, a rental in a different school district where fewer people recognize our name. Emma is 10. She knows the truth now. I told her on her 9th birthday because she deserved to hear it from me before she heard it somewhere else. She cried for 2 days, then got angry, then got quiet. She doesn't talk about her mother much. When she does, it's in past tense, like Jessica died instead of just being gone. Lily is 8. She remembers less. Sometimes she asks when Mom is coming home, and I have to remind her that Mom made choices that hurt people and she has to stay away for a very long time. Lily nods, accepts this, and goes back to her dolls or her homework. I don't know if that's resilience or denial. Claire still lives with us. She says it's temporary, that she'll get her own place soon, but we both know she won't. The girls need her. I need her. She's the stability in our fractured world. I testified at 4 trials, sat on the witness stand and walked prosecutors through spreadsheets and timelines and evidence I'd compiled in my home office while my wife slept 30 feet away. Defense attorneys tried to paint me as vindictive, as a jealous husband seeking revenge. It didn't work. The numbers don't lie, and I had nothing but numbers. The FAA overhauled their inspection protocols. There's a new oversight system now, independent audits, mandatory rotation of inspectors. They named it the Caldwell Protocol, which feels like a sick joke. My name attached to reforms that exist because I turned in my own wife. I still work at Brennan Industries. Different office, same job. People are polite. Nobody mentions it directly, but I see the way conversations stop when I enter the break room. I'm the guy who destroyed his family to do the right thing. Nobody knows quite how to act around that. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. Not morally, I know I did. But practically. Emma sees a therapist twice a week for anxiety. Lily has nightmares. I take medication for depression that I'll probably need for the rest of my life. We're all damaged in ways that might never heal. But then I think about Flight 1847. About the pilot who landed that plane with 90 seconds of hydraulic pressure remaining. About the 183 people who walked off that aircraft not knowing how close they'd come to dying. About the families who would have been destroyed if that plane had gone down. I think about the 14 aircraft we grounded. The thousands of flights that never happened. The crashes that never occurred because someone looked at the evidence and said enough. The other night, Emma asked me if I hated her mother. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the new table, in the new house, in our new life. Lily was already asleep. Claire was in her room on a work call. No, I told her. I hate what she did. I hate the choices she made, but I don't hate her. Do you still love her? I didn't have a good answer. The woman I loved doesn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. Maybe I loved an illusion, a performance, a carefully constructed version that hid the person willing to gamble with lives for money and affection. I love who I thought she was, I finally said. That's different. Emma nodded like that made sense. Maybe it did. She's so much older than 10. They both are. They've learned things no child should have to learn. That parents can fail catastrophically. That trust can be shattered. That doing the right thing doesn't mean things turn out right. But they've also learned resilience. Emma stands up for other kids at school now, the ones being bullied or left out. She has a fierce sense of justice that I recognize because I see it in the mirror. Lily draws pictures of families, all kinds of families, not just the traditional kind. Families with one parent. Families with aunts who stay. Families that are broken but still standing. We're still standing. Last week, I got a letter from a woman named Margaret Hale. She'd been on Flight 1847, seat 23B. She wrote to thank me. Said she had 3 grandchildren who might not exist if that plane had gone down. Said she knew it cost me everything to come forward, and she wanted me to know it mattered. I keep the letter in my desk drawer. On the hard days, and there are many hard days, I take it out and read it. Remind myself why I made the choice I made. There's no happy ending here. Jessica will be in prison until she's 68 years old. The girls will grow up without their mother. I'll carry the weight of having destroyed my own family for the rest of my life. But those passengers lived. Those planes were grounded. The system changed. In the end, that has to be enough. Because the alternative, staying silent, protecting my family at the expense of thousands of strangers, would have destroyed me just as surely. I would have become complicit. Every flight that took off, every passenger who boarded, every family that trusted the system, I would have carried them all. At least this way, I can look my daughters in the eye. I can tell them the truth, that their father saw something wrong and reported it, even when it cost him everything. That integrity matters. That some choices are impossible but necessary. Emma asked me once if I'd do it again, knowing what I know now. I didn't answer right away. I thought about the house we lost, the marriage that ended, the childhood my daughters will never get back, the therapy bills and the nightmares and the way people look at us. Then I thought about Flight 1847, about Margaret Hale's grandchildren, about the crashes that never happened. Yes, I told her, I'd do it again. She hugged me then, fierce and tight. Good, she whispered, because you're the bravest person I know. I'm not brave. I'm just a man who looked at evidence and made the only choice he could live with. But if my daughter thinks I'm brave, maybe that's enough. We're building a new life from the wreckage of the old one. It's smaller, quieter, marked by absence. But it's honest. There are no lies in this house, no secrets, just 3 people, sometimes 4, counting Claire, trying to move forward. The scars will never fully heal, but we're learning to live with them. Learning that broken things can still function, still matter, still have purpose. I coach Emma's soccer team. I help Lily with her homework. I go to work, pay the bills, make dinner. Small things. Normal things. The things that make up a life. And sometimes, late at night when the girls are asleep, I stand in the driveway and look up at the sky. Watch the planes pass overhead, their lights blinking in the darkness, carrying passengers who trust that someone checked, that the systems work, that their lives matter more than profits. They do. They have to. That's the only truth I have left to hold on to. And somehow, it's enough.